Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Riv. And we've got a good show for you today.
Yep, and it was a quiet weekend. I was surprised. I mean, it was a beautiful day yesterday, but obviously Hurricane Lee was big nothing for Fall River. We didn't even get heavy winds, so I'm thankful for that. Knock on woods. Hopefully, we don't get any new hurricanes, but it should be interesting to see what happens. I'm glad to see that we didn't get any flooding, but today they're saying we might get some flooding with the rains, and the rains are going to be worse this afternoon. So we'll have to check. So if you need to get things done, get them done early.
Okay, and yeah, that's correct. They said it's going to be pretty bad. I think they predicted over 3 inches of Fall River. So, because we've got such great storm drains, be prepared. Bring your canoe. So, but we have a guest today, and let's CJ, why don't you bring our guest in, and we can get this.
Hello, Michelle. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. We had a little earlier conversation about all our dogs. Mine is sleeping on the pillow.
So far, so good. I got
That's it.
two chewing on toys and one sleeping.
That works. So, Michelle, tomorrow's election day, and you've been very quiet this election season, but you're not the only one. Most of the candidates have been quiet, and you've actually reached out a lot to the community, and you fought for the members of this community regularly, and you always have, especially for the taxpayer and the dollars. You were against the water fee increases. You've been against property tax increases. You've always supported the taxpayer and the people of Fall River. And I gotta praise you for that because so many members on the council fight you on doing that. And I think it's unacceptable. They got to remember that they represent us. And that's something you've remembered your entire career as a city councilor, that you represent the people. And I think that's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I vote the way I believe is correct and right. I don't just do it off the top of my head. I think a lot of people don't realize, or if they do, don't think about the fact that just because you're voting today, it doesn't mean it only impacts today. There are votes we take today that impact the future. And you have to look at the future when you're voting. You can't isolate it. You could take a vote today that could financially really cripple us a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. And people, I think, need to be more cognizant of that.
Well, I think one of the votes that was taken by the council, which we now know and we've heard regularly, is going to affect the um, financial future of Fall River, is that diamond project. That's $6 million plus a year that's going to come out of the city budget, and because there's no adding it to any positions for the people. I mean, there's no way that the people have a word in it. And I think one of the things the council did wrong was the council turned around and they didn't send it to the people for a vote. I think that would have been something that would have been appropriate for the voters to take a vote on this situation. But we didn't get that vote. The city council took it upon themselves, and Joe Camara made it clear that we've done this before and we never had to have a debt exclusion, and we've done it for so many elementary schools. But today's a different day.
No, I agree. And I wanted it to go to the people myself. Generally, anytime there's something that's over $5 million, it goes to the people. Partly because we had $5.3 million in one-time funds in this budget again for 2024. Now add Diamond onto that, you're talking $11.3 million 2 years from now that we're going to have to come up with. Where do we find $11.3 million? And that's only two issues. Lord knows how many other issues is going to be. We can't forget the fact that they also plugged this budget with $2 million in funded vacancies. I don't know. There were, to me, a lot of problems. But you're correct. You take Diamond, you take the one-time monies. It's $11 million that we have to find somewhere.
Well, I think I'll bring a few up, and as CJ said, Michelle, you've always been the watchdog, and you do your homework, and I'll give everybody a little heads up on something that's going to bite us very severely, is the police contract. I remember that discussion vividly when our CFO said, when she was asked, you and Sean Kadim were the only two people who were asking any questions about the future funding of these contracts. She said, well, we're looking at some investments down the road. What does that mean? Does that mean we're hoping we hit a scratch ticket, or we're going to invest in scratch tickets? That is not an actual funding source. And this city did not fund that contract in compliance with Chapter 150E, Section 7, which says that every item in a collective bargaining agreement has to be funded. That is not funding it, saying we're going to do, we have some investments in mind. And this is just another thing. That's going to cost us millions, because that's what happens. They backload a contract, so now they're out of office. If you're the mayor, Coogan will be gone when this bites us. And these other councilors are going to hope everybody forgets that they created these problems. Just like them complaining about trying to run the con that the housing crisis is not being caused by market rate housing and inflation and people are getting murdered. They're saying we've done enough. We haven't done enough for people who work and now can't afford their rent. Public housing crisis is not a crisis. We have more than the average because we did this. The city council and the mayor gave the housing authority director, who was the brother of the mayor, a contract that said that he would get bonuses based on occupancy. And we advertised in Connecticut, New Jersey, and all over the country to get people in our public housing. That's why we have a disproportionate amount of public housing. But you see, that's the great thing about, you do your homework. They don't. They try to con the people. You know, there are people sitting in those seats, and I'm not gonna point to some of the newer councilors, like Andrew Raposo or even Laura Washington. They weren't around then. But Linda Pereira was, Joe Camara was. These people are fully aware what Carlton Viveris did when he made his brother the head of the housing authority, and they increased public housing. This is the thing. The people want not only transparency, they want honesty. And that's what I think you bring to the council. You know, when you ask a question, you have facts, and unfortunately, you never get a straight answer, and neither do we. And I wish you the best of luck tomorrow, because you know I support your candidacy, because you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that. And while we're on the subject of tomorrow, my name is 17th on the ballot. 19 people on the ballot, and I'm number 17. So I hope people keep that in mind. I can tell you, when it came to the police contract, one of the things that blew my socks off, quite frankly, was when I addressed the CFO and I asked one simple question. I asked her if the contract was sustainable. And her response to me was, the city of Fall River has no choice. That's not an answer. That's not addressing the question. The city of Fall River has no choice. You know, unfortunately, she's right. The taxpayers very often don't have a choice, and they're being put in a bad situation because of it. You know, our per capita income is extremely low. We have a small tax base. Nobody's going to tell me when you have $2 million in funded vacancies that you can't cut your budget. And these kind of things bother me. And you're right. I'm straightforward. I'm honest. I'm a politician by the fact that I was elected, but I am the furthest thing from a politician. I'm a person from the South End who just wanted to make a difference, a taxpayer who gets it, an individual who gets it. I've never had a connection in government center or anywhere in this city. I fought my way into my seat, and I just try to do the best I can do. And if people are happy with me, they'll keep voting for me.
Well, I think you made an extremely good point, because she did say that we have no choice, and that is the biggest lie in the world. We always have a choice, and that choice is to have people like you in the council who will make sure that they are fiduciarily responsible. They do have a choice. They had a choice, as you said, to carve money out of the budget, to tighten our belt. We know there's all kinds of unaccounted money. I talked about the $17,565,755 that this city has realized in surplus from their healthcare premium in FY 20, 21, 22, and 23. I sent a letter to the council, and I know you saw it, Michelle, but they're saying they don't have a choice. They do have a choice. Be fiduciarily responsible. What they're doing is illegal. They are ignoring their obligation, and you're right. Just for our viewers, our per capita income, and I haven't looked at it in a few weeks, but it's a little over 28,000 per capita, and 49,000 for a family. So how are people going to afford $20,000 in rent a year, or 18,000 when they're making 28,000? That is gross. So you're right, but they do have a choice. They have a choice, and they not only have a choice. And I'm going to close with this and let CJ weigh in, and you can weigh in. It's really not a choice. When you raised your hand and swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of this state and be answerable to the people and be our substitutes, you also took an oath to be a fiduciary, because you, as a councilor, are the City Ways and Means Committee. It is your obligation to spend our money wisely, and you are one of the few on that council who does that. They just hope everybody forgets, because they like to wrap it up, and they go in every other direction. Oh, we don't have a choice. Well, the only thing you don't have a choice in is death. I know that adage used to go, death and taxes, but we know Hunter Biden didn't have to pay taxes. So some people do get out of paying taxes, and so do some big giant companies. They've got 165 lawyers to find all the loopholes. The only thing we don't have a choice in, we're all going to end this journey the same way, in a box. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
You're not there, CJ. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's
We've
all right.
had a lot of comments that are being posted that I'm not posting on the air because we have a guest. If there's a serious question, I may pose the question, put the question up there. But there's a lot of comments that we don't want to pay for the police. We don't want to, with the rate of crime we have, and people don't want to be police officers anymore because of the nature of our society. It's not that we don't want to pay for police. The law says we must fully fund the contract. We must fully fund the contract. That's the law. And this contract was not fully funded. And nobody seems to want to accept that, especially the administration. The contract needs to be fully funded. And I understand that they can swing it any way they want, but it's not going to fly. If it's not fully funded, it's not fully funded.
You're right.
Well, I gotta get into that, because I know those are all the Coogan acolytes. You gotta pay police, you gotta pay firefighters, you gotta pay people who work for the city. But how about paying them by not hiring all the people Coogan hired with the opera money that we're gonna be on the hook for? How about not having a department head who has to have help with consultants? Aya Capone's gonna, I guess he's gonna end up with the only thing we don't have at dying as a consultant. Terry Sullivan, a consultant. We have department heads that can't run their departments without consultants. Don't give me that bullshit. Michelle won't say that, but I will. Don't give me that bullshit. We piss away money all the time on all these high-paying jobs that we don't need, and then we get them 3 assistants. You spend your money wisely. Pay the police. But don't hire 50, 60, 80 of your friends like you did with the opera money. How many people did we hire for the city? 48 or something like that? And a bunch of them in the school department. Now we got what? 6 assistant superintendents of schools? Don't get me fired up about that. You people are full of shit. I'm sorry. There's nobody that wants to pay public safety more than I do, because I fought for 25 years as their president to get them the salaries they deserve. But you can be damn well be assured that I don't like seeing somebody who worked for this city for 30 years come back as a consultant and make nice money while you hire some stooge that can't do their job. If that's not plain enough, I don't know how much more plainer I can get. So don't try to run that con on this show. Go out there and try to convince the public that we're not spending money. We're not just throwing it down a sewer.
And it's correct. Everybody supports public safety. So public safety is the lifeblood of every community. There's nobody who is against public safety. You know, I recently had a bill introduced by Alan Sylvia at the State House for the retention of public safety personnel in gateway cities, specifically for that reason. Number one, if this bill passes, it'll be in the form of grants to assist gateway cities in retaining their police, and it doesn't add a burden to the taxpayer in the gateway city. We're not going to go into the pocket again. So if we did more things like this, we'd be able to afford what we need to be able to afford. We'd be able to retain our public safety personnel. It isn't strictly for the police. It's for public safety personnel. But it's going to be done in a way that we're not crippling the taxpayer again. Because the bottom line to the story is, if you can't afford it, what happens? If they start cutting the budget, everybody knows the first ones who go are the public safety personnel. I don't want to lose any public safety personnel. I want to retain each and every one of them. And that's what I mean by your vote today can affect tomorrow.
I agree with you. And again, you show once again how you are fighting for the people of the city and for the city. When you generate a bill, I believe you wrote it, you testify before the House to try to get that bill passed, and that bill will allow the cities, gateway cities like Fall River, New Bedford, Lawrence, Lowell, Worcester, to pay more money for police, fire, EMS, and it won't hurt their own local budgets because that money will come from grant money that comes from the state. Not like we don't already get a lot of grant money from the state. And again, I want to make it very clear. Nobody wants to not pay the Fall River Police or the Fall River firefighters or Fall River EMS what they're worth. I mean, I don't want to take, a guy who weighs 200 pounds up and down 3 flights of stairs. That's nothing I want to do. But you've got EMS doing that. You've got police and fire doing that. Okay? That's a lot of work. They can take jobs elsewhere, and they have. They've gone to other communities like Seekonk, like Somerset, like Tiverton. They're taking it jobs anywhere else because it's less aggravation. We've got to pay them what they're worth. We've got to make sure they've got the benefits they deserve. And we've got to make sure that we can afford it. That's the key. We've got to be able to afford it. It's not a matter of not paying them. It's not a matter of not wanting to pay them more. The question is, can we afford to pay them more? And you've made that clear, Michelle, that we've got to be able to pay them more, and we've got to find ways of paying them more without it raping the taxpayer. Even though the taxpayers want more money taken off they want it in their own pockets. They don't want it in anyone else's pocket. They want to maintain their police force. They want to maintain their fire force. They don't understand, or they don't want to understand, that costs money. And money comes out of the taxpayer pocket. We are not a business. We don't have a profit and loss sheet. The only place we get money is from taxes. That's it. And grants and money from the federal government, money from the state. We only get money from taxes. So when we spend that money, we have to spend it based upon what the city anticipates it's going to bring in from taxes, which, as you can see, for the past 3 years, we've spent more than we've anticipated, and that's resulted in higher taxes and fees. And that's what happens.
Well, the one thing that became clear when we discussed the budget for one day was that our expenses are higher than our revenues. Well, if your expenses are higher than your revenues, that's a problem. That means you can't afford your budget. I mean, I don't think you need a PhD in economics to understand that when your expenses exceed your revenue, you have a problem.
Well, you're right, Michelle, but let me give some of these people who like to spin everything like, oh, you hate kids, or you hate this, or you hate that. Because obviously I worked in public safety and I negotiated in public safety. But I'm going to give them something that I know they are totally unaware of. It may still be in there, but we had to study it. The National Fire Protection Handbook, National Fire Protection Association Handbook, at the beginning talks about manning levels in fire departments. And the first thing it tells you is no community can afford to man their department for the worst case scenario, because it would bankrupt the community. You see, you have to use some reasonableness. The reality is that we're not going to have a 700-man fire department in Fall River assuming that we're going to have a Kerr Mill or a Notre Dame every week. They keep stats, they look at it, and there's also another aspect of fire prevention to reduce the number of fires. You have to look at a median. You have to have a department, and there's a formula for that. And there's a formula for that for police too. So one of the ways we can work with less police officers than a maximum, we can't consider ourselves being Chicago forever. But the way to handle that is to reduce crime. And we haven't seen a damn thing from this mayor and any kind of plan to reduce the crime. Do we need police officers? Yes. Would it be in a perfect world, should we have a 35,000-man police department like New York City? Yeah, but even New York City didn't reduce crime. They have more police officers than some communities have as a population. But the reality is the only time they control crime is when they implement policies to reduce crime, like they did with broken windows. So these people, they talk a lot, but they don't know anything about what they're talking about. I spent my life in public safety. And believe me, there were many fires that I went to that I wish I had a lot more manpower and I had to wait for people to come. But that's the nature of the beast. You just can't hire police. You have to hire enough police. And you have to pay them well. But the other aspect is, these people are, they're this clueless. Do you think somebody's going to go, unless they want promotions and stuff because they're more promotion in larger departments, you think somebody wants to work in Chicago when they can go to a suburb of Chicago that has virtually no crime and get almost the same or maybe equal or better pay? That's the other problem that all communities face, especially communities like Fall River. This is not, they like to oversimplify everything. Everything is just real simple. Yo, you hate police. You don't want to pay the police. And that's what they do. And you're the only person that actually does their homework. So I'm giving you a perspective based on an intimate knowledge of public safety. So I just wanted to bring it up because these people try to make everything, oh yeah, you don't want to pay them. And there's not I don't think, although I guess maybe I'm wrong because there were people that wanted to defund the police in some of the worst cities and states in this country that are having the worst problem. But I think those people are insane. But any normal person wants public safety and good education. And with that, I'll let you guys handle.
Well, it's interesting that, there's a lot of comments about, we need to pay more because people go not like the quieter communities. And, quieter communities seem to have more revenue. I'm not sure if they do or not, but they seem to. And they seem to be able to pay more. And Fall River is now going to pay more. Their contract gave, I believe, was an 18% increase in their salary. And that was the big question. Where is that money going to come from? And the only thing that the CFO could say was, we're looking down the road at other investments. That doesn't mean the contract is funded. Yet the city council passed it, which was against the law. They needed to pass the contract once the city can prove that it's fully funded. Because it's not only the salaries, it's the benefits, it's the salary, it's the retirements, it's the vacations, it's all of that. And they've got to look at it. And again, nobody's saying the police don't deserve it. On the contrary, they do. In this city, they deserve it. But can we afford it? And if we can't afford it, are the taxpayers willing to dig into their pockets and take out another $10, $15, $25 to pay for it? Michelle?
Yeah, and that's the whole key. At best, and I don't even believe it's 30% anymore, but at best, 30% of the population supports 100% of the population. That number is getting smaller. Everybody's income is getting smaller. What do you do? What do you do? We have people in encampments who get a check, who work and can't afford their rents anymore. So they're living in the woods because they can't afford their rents. You want to get another $100, $1,000 a year out of them? They can't even pay for a roof over their head. And these are the things that we're facing. This is what we're looking at. There's one gentleman I spoke with. His rent was $800. His landlord came to him and said, "Well, my apartment's a waterfront apartment now, so now your rent's going to be $1,800." What do people do with that? Mike Dionne sat at that table at the last city council meeting and said, "You're exactly right. That is what's happening, and it's only going to get worse." So where are we going to get the money to pay for everything? And this isn't just about police, and people shouldn't make it just about police. If your children can't be safe, you don't want to live in the community. We all get that. But add Diamond onto it. Add the $5.3 million in one-time funds. Consider the fact that we, again, had we cut the $2 million and funded vacancies, that could have gone towards the contract. They said the contract was going to increase the budget by $1.8 million. No, it didn't. It increased the budget by $2.6 million. That's a substantial difference. If we had cut $1 million and funded vacancies, we could have covered $1 million of that increase, but we didn't do that. That's the point of the story. It's not who you support, who you don't support, or what you support. It's the funding and how you're going to fund it. And what are you willing to give up to have that? Because public safety, again, is number one. And you should be willing to give something up that's less important to be able to keep and maintain and pay for what is important.
Well, you're right, Michelle, because government waste is always a problem. But I'll bring in another little aspect that people don't know. You may be aware of it. You know, I took this city to arbitration on contracts twice and won both. And we had to prove ability to pay. But what a lot of people don't realize, and CJ brought this out about communities, smaller communities being able to afford it, as are richer communities, obviously. But uh, Fall River at that time had about only 50% of the land in the city was taxable. Only 50%. Others were church land, public land. Somerset, Massachusetts was raising almost as much tax revenue as the city of Fall River. Of course they can afford to pay their people, and their departments are minuscule compared to Fall River.
And
I
the
don't know how
number,
many people they got on a Somerset police department, but I know they're nowhere near the size of as is the fire department. As a matter of fact, at the time we did the arbitration, the fire department budget was larger than the entire town budget of Somerset. So Somerset's all single family houses fundamentally, and they all pay taxes. And in Fall River, as you said, our tax base is shrinking because people are being driven out of the city and they're running out of the city. People can't afford their rents. And the reality is that the people with the most money get TIFs, and they shift that burden to the people too. See, I love these people. Politicians, for the most part, that's why you're really not a politician. You know, you're someone who got elected to a position, but remembered they were still one of us. And that's what makes me appreciate what you do so much. But the reality is, it's a lot more complicated than people think. It's a lot more complicated than people think. And we cannot waste our money. Maybe Newton can afford to waste our money, but it's about priorities. That's what we're talking about. Priorities. Is it giving all Paul's friends a job? And giving all Paul's friends a pay raise? Like creating a department in a school department that went from 1 supervisor to 4 supervisors? Rather than pay public safety? That's the issue here. The issue is it's a lot more complicated, but they want to reduce it to, well, if you say anything like this, you're against them. No, we're for them. And we're for the taxpayer at the same time. And I will close.
Well, it's true, Chip. We got to keep in mind that our city budget is based upon how much money we can extract from the taxpayers. And as was mentioned earlier, the taxpayer base is dwindling. I have a question though that needs to be asked because this is really recent. And what do you think should be done with the Bank Street Armory, Michelle? And is it possible for the city to limit the number of apartments that go in there or the type of apartments that go in there if the city council decides to approve the bid from Alan Macomber? And did you feel pressured by Mr. Macomber when he was in front of the city council at the last meeting?
okay, that's a lot of questions in one. I'll start with the last one. No, I did not feel pressured because that's not the way I look at things. You can have 5 people beat a drum, but you still have to get to the crux of the matter. I feel I've been totally against the selling price. Again, back to the taxpayers. So almost 300,000, just around $300,000 in taxpayer dollars have gone into that building. But yet we're going to sell it for less than the taxpayers have invested. To me, that's wrong. At minimum, the taxpayer dollars should come back to the city. So that's a number one problem. A number two problem is when the gentleman from Pawtucket, I believe, was going to purchase the building, it had to be purchased at the assessed value. Well, this isn't even at the assessed value. So there's another problem. it appears, and I'm going to say appears, that they can demand that a certain percentage be more affordable units. But if you listen to what Mr. Macumber said, it's going to be veterans only, which is fine. If you've got 200 apartments and 10% have to be affordable, well, you're talking 20 units. Absolutely, we can find 20 veterans in this city who need housing, and I have no issue with that. You know, I don't know. I think we still need to look at is it viable for the city to keep it and try to turn it into a productive building again? You know, could it be used as a veterans center so that all the veterans organizations could operate on a one building collectively? Could they maintain it? I don't know. But I know at the least the selling price, that's atrocious. And I cannot agree with that. I don't care who's buying it.
Well, I've been against the sale of the Bank Street Armory for $200,000 as well, because again, we've already invested over $400,000 into the building. The building is assessed at a higher value than $200,000. And Macomber, while he's a great developer, he's only investing $5 million into the building because the rest is going to come from the taxpayers. So he shouldn't be complaining. He got the old Durfee Tech building, and he got that as a stolen property as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he got it for a steal, and he's made it into buildings with, art studios or whatever. He's doing a good job with that area of town. But again, to apply for, this is not only for Bank Street, this is for everywhere in the city, to apply to the ZBA, which I don't think has the authority or should have the authority for parking waivers, is wrong. You're destroying the neighborhoods. You're destroying the ability for people to have a car, and you're destroying the ability of people to park their cars. And I don't want to hear that Fall River will become a big city and they'll go to biking. I want to see you bike up the President Avenue, Seven Hills in the winter in snow. I want to see that. Okay? Because believe me, or even just drive up seven hills on a bike. It's almost impossible. You've got to be a marathon biker. This is a city of hills, mills, and bills. That's the old expression. And we have to be willing to say to these developers, if you want to put in 120 units or worse, 205 units, like at Duro, and you don't want to provide parking, you better downplay the number of units you want to provide. You've got to provide only the number of units that you can have the parking for. And the ZBA regularly destroys neighborhoods because they grant these waivers. Okay? And they've done it downtown, which already has a problem with parking. And with the market rate housing that's going in downtown from Anthony Cadero and others, they've waived the parking requirement because it's all on-street parking. It's all on-street parking. These people are going to have no place to park their cars. And we're not in New York. We don't have lots where you can rent a parking space on a monthly basis. And that's what has to be considered. Maybe it's time for some of these developers to say, well, maybe we should start building some parking garages where we can rent parking spaces on a monthly basis and get what they're worth, not what the city's charging, because the city's charging cheap money. That's for sure.
Yeah, but then again, the other problem is, and where are you going to put all these parking garages? Are they going to be in close proximity to these developments that don't have adequate parking? Or is the parking garage going to be 4 blocks away? It's not like we have a lot of space to erect parking garages. I don't know. As it stands, I am not for the sale of the Armory at this point in time, unless somebody can tell me something better. Tell me the city's going to benefit in some other way. I personally, at this point, can't support it.
It's interesting. One of our viewers just said, build up the parking decks on existing parking lots, put them on top, which makes sense. Build them up. And as a matter of fact, I think under the Jazel Carrera administration, we heard something about that, where they were going to build up a parking deck and put on top of it a park. So, I mean, you got to think outside of the box. You got to think outside of the box.
Well, that's
You know,
not a bad idea, but where are you going to put them?
Right. That's the big question. Where do you put them, and how do you make it happen? Michelle, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been great to spend this 40 minutes plus with you, and I wish you the best of luck on the election tomorrow. I'm sure you're going to come in at least one of the top 18. I hope one of the top 9. And Chip, you have anything to close with?
Yeah.
Yep,
You're
he's
muted
muted.
again.
Yeah, I know, this
Yep.
You're muted again.
isn't the thing. This is like my phone.
There you
Okay,
go.
can you hear me now?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. All right. So, Michelle, thank you for being here. You know, I've been impressed with your service as a council person. I hope you are at the top of the ticket because you deserve to be there. And we appreciate you spending your valuable time with us. And, you know, because you're the only one that really cuts through to the heart of the issue. Like, you know, CJ wanted to talk about biking. Forget it. They don't even bike in the big cities for the most part. This is not Europe. These people are delusionary. But you're not delusionary, and I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for being with us.
All right, thank you. Don't forget number 17.
I already voted, so you're all set. I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday.